What's up, everybody, and welcome to Syracuse Football Postgame, presented by Krause Health, the exclusive healthcare partner for Syracuse Athletics. You got Brent Axe, you got Chris Carlson from syracuse.com here. After the Orange complete, the greatest comeback in program history, finish off a 9-3 regular season, which every single one of you, and if I had come to you from the future, it said Syracuse football is going to go 9-3 in 2024. Everyone takes that deal. They got it. An incredible first year with a bowl game to go, don't forget, for Fran Brown and company. Kyle McCord sets more quarterback records, and the No.6 Miami Hurricanes go down in the JMA Wireless Dome. 42-38 was the final score in a game where, Chris, we've got a lot to get into in terms of what this means for this team, big picture, with the offseason coming. We've got a voicemail from someone you know, and we've got a mystery voicemail to come as well. So you guys stay tuned for that. Little intrigue.
Do you know who the mystery voicemail is?
I do. I am aware of. Right. I have to know because I'm the one that edits everything and puts.
Otherwise, we'd have a bad situation potentially. Yeah.
I have not listened to the entire mystery voicemail, but I know who left it, and you guys are certainly going to enjoy hearing this voice coming up here. We'll hear from our Syracuse Sports Insiders, of course, as well. Their great insight and the wave of emotions they went through during this game. But you know what really stands out to me, to start with the game itself, Chris? It's exactly what we thought it would be. Everybody I talked to this week, they're like, hey, what do you think? I'm like, shootout. This just felt like a shootout all the way, and that's exactly what we got at the Dome today. It was the Cam Ward, Kyle McCord show everybody expected.
Yeah, Miami has scored on everybody all season and hasn't stopped anybody, and Syracuse not that far off from that type of scenario. Kyle McCord won the passing yardage. Beat Shedeur Sanders by 20 yards with his performance from tonight. So NCAA passing champ Kyle McCord. And yeah, it lived up to its billing to the point that a 21-point deficit was nothing. Not nothing, right? Not nothing. But I mean, that Syracuse was able to come back from 21 points against a good team is really stunning.
Well, add that to the list for Kyle McCord, by the way. Single-season yardage leader in Syracuse history, single-season touchdown leader, which he accomplished. He's the first 4,000-yard passer in Syracuse history, and he was the NCAA passing champ this year, just beating out Shedeur Sanders, as you mentioned there. Why isn't McCord in the Heisman conversation? Why just Travis Hunter and Ashton Genty at this point? And listen, Cam Ward was in that conversation up until a couple of weeks ago. I don't think he's going to get invited to New York or is a serious candidate for the Heisman anymore, but Cam Ward had that kind of season. And to see that kind of game play out, Chris, you said it too. This team is down 21-0. Okay, my biggest fear for Syracuse coming into this game was I felt like there was some leaky parts, if you will, of the secondary that Cam Ward would expose, even against UConn a week ago. Frankly, if UConn had a quarterback, they could have won that game because of some flaws I saw in Syracuse's secondary. It's 21-0 out of the gate, and you're thinking that Cam Ward's having a day. He's got all day to throw the football. He's finding his receivers. Syracuse had a lot of trouble guarding a couple of Miami's players that got open in this game. Just looking at the stats, notably Respro, who ends up with 148 yards on the day. George ends up with 121 yards on the day. Chris, they had some speed, and they were finding open receivers in the flat. But you know what? Syracuse has been a bend-but-don't-break defense all year. And when they really had to make the plays, they're down 21-0. They make a couple of stops. Syracuse gets back into it at 21-14. Devin Grant makes one of the plays of the day, punches the ball out, runs it back 56 yards for a touchdown on a torn MCL, by the way. What a revelation there from Fran Brown after the game, that Devin Grant's been playing with a torn MCL the past 3-4 weeks. So the T in DART stands for tough, and that exemplifies what Fran's looking for there. But it's amazing to see what can develop over 4 quarters. And look, Chris, we've said it all year, and we've got to say it again. Shout out to the defense, of course, for the plays that they made. But when you have Kyle McCord, you're always in the game. And that was always going to be Syracuse's best defense, if you will, was to let McCord go out there and sling it. And that's exactly what we saw, with some help, though, in some key defensive plays.
Jim Mora mentioned this, Junior mentioned this, and I think it is actually really smart. And UConn's play-by-play guy maybe mentioned it. Maybe it wasn't Jim Mora, but the fact that Syracuse can run like ball control, possession offense while throwing it is just really like, you think about a shootout with Miami, you think you're getting the ball back, right?
Yes.
Like you're thinking all sorts of possessions, but like the game doesn't play out that way because Syracuse just churns out first downs and they bleed out the clock while throwing the ball, or they can score quick, right? I mean the three play drive to start the second half to me, I think really set the tone for the second half. And really the rest of the game, right? They're down 7 points. They come out at halftime. Their first possession, they just throw the ball deep. 3 straight plays, go 75 yards in 3 plays. And after that moment, it sort of felt like Miami was the team that was playing on its heels.
And you know what, Chris? A lot of our Syracuse sports insiders during the game, this is what's great about seeing kind of the ups and downs and the emotions that they have during the game. But a lot of people were saying Syracuse should not have deferred to the second half. You take the ball, you set the tone, you come out there.
I was thinking it. I
thought it too. Not going to lie. 90% of the time, I'm a proponent of get the ball in the second half, set that tone, and that turned out to be the right choice here. It was hairy for a while there, but you said it. It's the way they came out. It's one thing to have the ball, but if you go 3 and out and run the ball and don't take advantage of it, what does it do? They came out and went deep and said, we are going to be in this thing. And from that moment, we were off. And it was important for Syracuse to get back in it there to make the plays in the second quarter that they did that we mentioned here. So Syracuse gets down 21-0. They outscore Miami really from that point 42-17 to get the 42-38 win. And this is going to settle into the offseason, Chris. It's going to be the conversation. Who is the quarterback in 2025? Syracuse fans want to savor this, what McCord has done, but that's why you were in this game. And that's what Fran Brown has to go out there and find now, whether that quarterback is on this roster and Jakari Williams or Michael Johnson Jr. or an incoming freshman, which I think would be hard to believe would take over this team next year in a Luke Carney.
But not if you want to win, right?
Not if you
want to win.
Exactly. This is, and Fran said it. They've set the standard. That's what McCord has done of what he wants his quarterback to be at Syracuse. So more than likely that comes out of the portal. But Chris, so I'm going to go to the macro for a minute here. You beat Miami, and Syracuse set a poor record on either ESPN or a broadcast network in the past 3 years. They're now 3-11 in that realm, right? When the bright lights are really shining here. But the ripple effect all off season, the conversation you can have, not only that you beat Miami in the spot, but a quarterback like Kyle McCord can come from Ohio State to Syracuse and have success. So a lot of quarterbacks are going to notice that and will put Syracuse on their list. And Kyle was asked in postgame, in case you guys are wondering, about Ohio State lost today to Michigan, and Kyle being Kyle just had a nice sly forward answer to that, Chris. And you got a great piece about this up on syracuse.com. But Kyle McCord says it all comes full circle. Right? There you go. All comes full circle.
Everything comes full circle. Ohio State, full circle, 2 losses to Michigan. Kyle McCord, full circle, just winner. Wins.
I'll tell you what, Chris, I'm going to do it. I was going to do a whole podcast about this, and maybe I still will because it's a fun podcast conversation. Kyle McCord is on the Mount Rushmore of Syracuse quarterbacks. That discussion's over now. He is there. He's the first 4,000-yard passer. He has the single-season touchdown and passing yards mark. He has set the tone, as we're mentioning here. We'll see what happens. But he has turned around a feeling and a perception about Syracuse. Now, they have to keep it up. That's the thing. But think of the launch pad he has given Fran Brown to go out there and convince quarterbacks to come to Syracuse, because Fran did it with Kyle, took a chance on him, was in his living room pretty much the minute the portal opened, and got him to believe in Syracuse football. And for Kyle McCord to come in with a lot of players that were recruited under a different administration, some that were brought in by Fran, Jackson Meeks, who had a huge day today, but Trevor Pena was a holdover from the last administration. And we heard all last year, Chris, about, man, if Trevor Payne was healthy, you guys would really see what he would do. We got to see that this year, and in this game in particular, because they had a quarterback like McCord that could get him the football. So he's on the Mount Rushmore for me. I'll put him there with Donovan McNabb, Donnie McPherson, and Eric Dungy. Sorry to Ryan Nassib and Marvin Graves, who are also knocking on the door of that conversation, but those are my four. But I think no matter who you list, Kyle McCord's name is there. He just had one of the most extraordinary single seasons we've ever seen from a Syracuse quarterback.
He might be the ACC Offensive Player of the Year. Like, you and I both have to vote for different bodies. And I was thinking, he'd be my second team quarterback, like, heading into today. Like, that's, Cam Ward, Kyle McCord, 1-2 for me. But we just saw him outplay number one. So there's some recency bias. He did play the clunker against Pittsburgh. Cam Ward didn't have a clunker to that degree this year. But I don't know. I am gonna have to brew some coffee and stay up late because my pick is due at 5 p.m. tomorrow afternoon, and I don't know which way I'm going right now.
All right, I got to ponder that too. But fresh off of that game, I mean, if there's a tiebreaker in that conversation, McCord he didn't beat Cam Ward straight up.
He outplayed
the Miami defense, but he outplayed Cam Ward. So I don't know. I think we're both going to have first team votes on that one, but we'll sleep on it and let you know when that poll comes out here. So, Chris, a lot on the offense, of course. Meeks had a huge day. Payne had a huge day. LaQuint Allen is out there. He just has this way of putting a human rubber stamp on these games, right? The first down runs that he gets, he's leaping over guys, plowing into the end zone, right? This was not a game that you felt like Syracuse was going to run the ball a lot because it was a quarterback shootout, as we said, but there's LaQuint Allen just getting those big runs in what I think was his last game in the Dome. LaQuint has talked recently, even told me in a recent postgame, like he appreciates how this team has treated him like a senior all year. He participated in senior day. There was a video that SU Athletics put out. They were carrying the seniors off in their final practice. He was one of the guys. I think Fran mentioned in postgame they're going to try and convince him to stay, but I don't see LaQuint Allen coming back, but had a heck of a walk-off, not only today, but in his final season in what we think will be at Syracuse.
Yeah, he asked for our help convincing LaQuint, and I hope LaQuint is not taking football advice from you or I ever. But Fran's looking for help to keep LaQuint in Orange next season. So that probably tells you maybe the direction he thinks it might be heading.
Breaks my heart to say it, but his heir apparent, Yassine Willis, had a big fumble in this game. Now, it didn't turn out to swing the game for a loss for Syracuse, but after that, a few insiders noticed this, Chris. Boy, Fran Brown, he could be as passionate as anybody during the game. He was working the refs who were just awful today. There's just no other way to put the performance of those officials out there. ACC officials have been a problem all year. Miami always seems to be in the thick of that conversation, by the way, one way or the other. And they had a rough day out there overall. So Fran was working the refs. But after that fumble, Fran really went after Jeff Nixon as well. And you could probably tell what he was saying. Fran has been LaQuint Allen's biggest fan. He's called him the best player on this team numerous times. And I can assume that's what he was saying to Jeff Nixon at that point. Like, don't give Yassine Willis the ball in that spot. I need LaQuint Allen out there.
Sure. Why are we giving it to a freshman in a big game, true freshman in a big game situation? Yassine will be okay. Well, I have faith that he will fulfill the vision that you have for him as a Syracuse football player.
You got it. As Kyle McCord said, it'll come full circle. Yassine's going to have a big moment that's going to win Syracuse a game sooner rather than later, and I feel like he's ready to step into that number one role next year. A couple other things here, Chris, before we hear from some insiders in our voicemails here. And I want to hear what you think at this point, what we know about bowl scenarios. A lot of people are asking, where Syracuse is going to end up there. So with the focus on offense, but I mentioned it earlier, that bend but don't break defense. Grant's play. Jaden Bellamy makes a big tackle, breaks up a pass that Miami just looked like they were never going to have to put the punter on the field all day long, but they break up that play. Deuce Chestnut breaks up a play that almost was an interception, right? That stop, You had a big sack by Fidel Diggs, who just has come up with a number of those all season long for Syracuse. Georgia Tech game, UNLV game. It just, Fidel can be, you're like, is Fidel playing today? And then he'll make a big tackle like that in a big play. And, of course, the Devin Grant play that we brought up, the 56-yard fumble return here. That's what this defense has been all year, right? Justin Barron's on and off the field. He got shaken up a couple of times. Marlo Wax had a big tackle down the stretch. Syracuse.
Jaden Bellamy had a big pass breakup on the first time that they stopped Miami, where Miami scored on their first 3 drives. Jaden sort of stopped that drive, and he was coming back from an injury. Davian Kerr played the first couple drives, and Jaden also had a big play that sort of stopped Miami just from churning out touchdowns, it seeming.
Now, how did you see this, Chris? Because technically the Syracuse defense did stop Miami and hold them to a field goal with about 5 minutes to go. But if you're Mario Cristobal, do you go for it there? I mean, that was a big, which it failed because Kyle McCord went up the field and bled the clock out, and Miami didn't have a chance to get back in this thing. But the way McCord's slinging it, the way that offense is going, the way that type of game to put faith in your defense to stop Syracuse at that point, I thought that was an interesting call on his point.
No, I would have preferred to go for the touchdown, because even if you give it up on downs, like, you're giving Syracuse the ball deep in its own end, so you're trying to force the stop anyway, right? So okay, you have a chance to force overtime with the touchdown instead of win it, but, like, you know, take 2 chances at the touchdown, right? Yeah, I would have liked to see him go for it. But Syracuse fans are happy he did not.
Yes, they were. And it was, when it's a back and forth game like that, you're just waiting for that moment where someone's going to lose the game. And right there, it just felt Syracuse won the game with their defense, don't get me wrong, but that was a decision that was made too, to not go for it there. And I'm wondering, Miami's certainly going to look back on that. And what is it with all these coaches in these? Not, this wasn't as egregious as Matt Eberflus on Thanksgiving, just leaving a timeout in his pocket. Don't get me wrong, but those decisions that these coaches are paid to make, and Cristobal's come under some heat, Chris.
Yeah, he's not. He had the play where he should have kneeled and instead ran the ball and fumbled last year.
Exactly.
That was actually like a fireable, egregious level blunder.
So
not just something that you and I disagree with it in hindsight and just be like, no, you did it wrong. But that is bad.
He blew it, and we all knew it. And so he's like double the scrutiny when he's in these situations where he's got to make those decisions. So something to look back on there for sure, and they'll be regretting through the offseason. Chris, a lot of insiders asked, so what are we looking at bowl-wise here for Syracuse? So, by the way, both Kyle McCord and Fran Brown sending a message to Clemson, basically, you're welcome, that they clinched you a spot in the ACC championship game against SMU, with Miami now out of that scenario. So with that, there were 3 teams from the ACC slotted in the playoff this week, with Miami and Clemson losing. That's certainly going to be different when the rankings come out later this week. So knowing that, you know, what team gets in the playoff and how everything kind of falls from there, what's your best case look at where you think Syracuse is looking at bowl-wise right now?
So I think Syracuse will go to either the Gator, the Pop-Tarts, which would be very, very I'm looking for the right word. But Emily Liker will miss her if we go to the Pop-Tarts Bowl, but she'll want
to come anyway. So, yeah. We'll have to keep a spot in the press box for Emily at the Pop-Tarts Bowl, even though she's covering the National Football League. Now, by the way, Pop-Tarts Bowl in attendance at the JMA Wireless Dome today.
Yeah, or the Holiday Bowl. Those are sort of the 3 top bowls for the ACC outside of the playoffs. I'm thinking that the ACC will probably get 2 teams in the playoffs, which, one of those teams that doesn't make it, probably Miami, will go to one of those 3 bowls, and then you probably have Syracuse, Duke. So you probably have those 3, and Syracuse really could go to any of them because they haven't been to any of them in a while. They went to the Camping World Bowl, which is the Pop-Tarts Bowl in 2018. So I sort of tend to lean more Holiday Gator in terms of where they would go, but it's been long enough that they could go to any of the 3.
All right, so let's go through this. Gator Bowl, Florida.
Jacksonville, yep.
Pop-Tarts Bowl, Orlando.
Florida.
Holiday Bowl, San Diego.
And I sort of go against San Diego, too, because Syracuse has been to the West Coast a couple times. So
Yeah.
I do sort of think one of the Florida Bowls will be the destination.
Those are three good choices right there. I mean, I'd rather go to
They're
Orlando.
warm. They're
They're all
warm.
warm. They're all warm and all post-Christmas bowls. Those are,
Yep.
if I'm not mistaken, right? When Justin Barron talked to you before the season, he said, if I'm going to come back and play, it's not going to be in a pre-Christmas bowl, right? I'm paraphrasing what he said, but all good status in terms of bowl games, all warm weather locales, and let's face it,
Good opponents.
good opponents. SEC opponent in the Gator Bowl if they're there.
Yep.
So, okay. All right. That's what happens when you win 9 games, kids. All the choices are good ones when it comes to bowl games. So you're telling me we're not going to the Pinstripe Bowl again. No Fenway Bowl for Syracuse this year.
I will guarantee you no Pinstripe and no Fenway. They are above that point.
Syracuse will not be playing a bowl game in a cold baseball stadium in late December. So good news there. Okay, so the bowl scenario's out of the way there. Let's see what our Syracuse Sports Insiders had to say about this one. And it was a pleasure, as always, to hear from our Syracuse Sports Insiders during this game. Being a Syracuse Sports Insider means you get direct text message access to me anytime. You guys, as Syracuse Sports Insiders, get group messages from me, but I can text you individually as well. Your questions, your comments, your opinions, your insight on Syracuse football. You guys are sending me pictures from your tailgates. I'm getting pictures, Chris, from insiders. As Chicago Mike put it, I'm breaking out the good stuff. Then he showed me some, some terrific bourbon that he's using to celebrate this season.
All right.
So shout out to Chicago Mike there. And being a Syracuse Sports Insider is just gives you not only all that, but exclusive voice on this postgame show. We do not highlight comments from social media or anywhere else. Only the insiders get their voice heard on the show. So we'd love for you to join today. Join subtext.com/Syracuse Sports, or you can text the word orange to 315-847-3895 to sign up. It's just $3.99 a month, but you can try it free for 2 weeks before you commit to that. Matt S. says, what an amazing first season under Fran. And to think this guy never coached above a position coach to head coach, he'll definitely get better, and we know the recruiting will be there. And that's it, Chris. No rest for the weary here. Signing day is Wednesday. So Syracuse will lock down, which right now is the largest recruiting class in the country. There were a ton of recruits in the building today. And then the portal opens next Monday, December, what is that, the 8th? Not this upcoming Monday, December 1st.
It will be the 9th.
A week later. So that'll be December 9th. So Syracuse jumping right into it here. It was about a year ago they hired Fran Brown. Per Matt's text there, think about where they are now, going into the portal and recruiting, locking up one class, but always recruiting, of course, for the next one with a 9-3 season under your belt. In your first year as head coach, that's pretty darn good.
Yep. You can certainly sell that trajectory.
Gene says, speechless. Best game I've witnessed in 20 years. And he notes, I lost my best friend of 40 years last year who sat next to me at games for 28 years. I felt him there today, and I'm not going to lie, I shed a tear or two. So, Gene, sorry to hear about your friend, but certainly he was looking down from above, and a great day for Syracuse fans out there. They rushed the field after the game. I think that's a field rushing worthy game. I don't have any quibbles with that. It's one of the biggest upsets Syracuse has had, certainly since the Clemson game in 2017, but certainly ever in the Dome.
I mean, it's their second top 10 win in 22 years. So if you're gonna, I think field storming, thumbs up. The doable.
Jan says this, on a day that Ohio State got beat again, thank you, Buckeyes, for not believing in McCord. I'm sure the McCord family was very happy about this win today for Syracuse, on top of Ohio State losing to Michigan 13-10 earlier today.
Two interceptions for Will Howard, like 170 yards.
I think we know who won that one. Connor B says, thank you, John Wildhack. He took a massive leap, and it might have been the best decision he's ever made. And he notes this, too. I hope this is the beginning of something special for years to come. Chris, look, that's a good point. I mentioned, look, it's a year ago, and Bob Chesney, was almost signed, sealed, delivered. The only thing he didn't do was sign on the bottom line. Fran Brown came in late. It was a Zoom call with John Wildhack on Thanksgiving last year that convinced Wildhack to basically take it a couple steps further do his, to use one of his favorite terms, due diligence on Fran Brown, and he took a leap on a guy who had not been a head coach before, certainly had a noted reputation as a recruiter, named the best recruiter in the country by 247 Sports. But when you've got the backing of Kirby Smart and a lot of people in the industry, and you got to make a choice, you could go with the safe pick. Bob Chesney won at Holy Cross. He's been a head coach. Bob Chesney had a great year at JMU. That would have been a good choice. Fran Brown, you took the risk on, but with risk, there's reward. And in this case, at least after one season, Syracuse seems to have made the right choice between not only those two, but for what Syracuse needed.
Yeah. I was talking about it in the press room a little bit. Like, I would have guaranteed I would have bet on success after the 2018 season too. So you never know, but first year coach seems to get Syracuse the boosters in a time when boosters have never been more important. Seem like they really like Fran. Like that synergy seems like it's been lacking, before, and that's what a program needs. Everybody, all the oars pull in the same direction.
That's right. A few more here from our Syracuse sports insiders. Frankie S. says that was a program-changing win. They answered every punch thrown at them all season. They learned not only how to win, but to win when it matters most. Guys stepping up when others went down. Now, that leads me to my next comment, Chris, and I do think this is fair to say. Some people will grumble and say, hey, Grumpy Gus here. Q Endzone says, I'm feeling sick about the Stanford and BC games. 2 games this team should have won, and we'd be playoff bound. Look, that's sports. Things happen. You lose games. Fran even said it in the presser, though, Chris, when he was talking about Kyle McCord, that it was fourth down plays that led to losses against Stanford and BC that Kyle McCord didn't have control over, right? So, fair. But where I'll give Q Endzone a little slack to make that comment is in the portal era, in the modern era of college football, when you have a guy like Kyle McCord, you've got to get everything you can out of those teams because you're essentially hitting the reset button for next year. So those moments might sting a little bit more because Syracuse would be in the ACC championship game and in the playoff conversation if they did make that fourth down play against Stanford or Boston College. Now, we can live in a world of hypotheticals. 9-3 is a great season one way or the other, but I think that's fair to at least say this is great, but man, they were so close to it being even better.
I just think you can do that with so many teams. If you do, you can do that with just so many teams every year, and you can play the exact opposite game with a play in UNLV and a play at Georgia Tech, and then all of a sudden we're talking about they're 7-5, and this year's a disappointment. So I'm just not interested in in the one or two play game because like Fran has said multiple times this year, that's football at this point. College is like the NFL. It comes down to the fourth quarter. It comes down to a few plays.
Where I think it's fair, too, is Fran will be the first person to tell you, he even said it in the post game a little bit tonight, that 9-3 is great, and I'm paraphrasing here, but 9-3 is great, but my standard is national championship, right? I want to do what the 59 team, what the 87 team did. We can be better than this. He has said that. I know a lot of coaches say things like that, but you kind of believe him when he says it. Now that
I just want people to enjoy 9-3. Enjoy 9-3. Do not dwell on BC and Stanford. Enjoy this season. It was a beautiful thing.
Most people, like we said, if I had offered you 9-3 back on August 31st, you would have taken it on the spot, and you got it. And the vibes that will carry into the offseason, how this can help Syracuse recruit, portal. Now you go back to some of those donors that you mentioned, Chris, that are important, that maybe we're hesitant to donate. They're going to be writing checks now. Everything flows from that 9-3 season. Cody D notes it here, going 9-3 and beating Miami at home. Does that make you think of how close they really were to reaching the ceiling of this team per what we were just talking about? Yeah, briefly, but as we were saying, enjoy it here. There was another one here that I wanted to note, Chris. Michael B. There's such a difference of 9-3 versus 8-4, especially with a top 10 win. And he notes, unbelievable, Brent. There is. If Syracuse had lost this game, it's like a good meal.
Yeah, good season.
Good season. You go to that restaurant, you can get the good hamburger. 9-3 is wow. I was not expecting that. And yeah, it's hard to find fault in it. Like, everybody finds fault in some meals, like maybe your French fries weren't warm enough or something. But man, we had a great meal. 9-3 just feels big and different, and best case scenario in a lot of ways. I think 10-2 was like the ultimate best case scenario for this team, but 9-3 is above all expectations.
Yep.
Couple more here, Chris, from our Syracuse Sports Insiders. Rich R says, give kudos to Dino for recruiting some top-level guys like LeQuint, Pena, Wax, Barron, Gatson. They were a huge part of this team's success. And think about how they were on the fringe at this time last year, Chris. OG said he was only coming back if Syracuse had a quarterback. Barron came very close to signing his transfer papers. Marlowe Wax had a decision to make. All these guys. LeQuint Allen almost wasn't a part of the program because of some things that happened off the field, which our old friend and colleague Emily Leiker did extensive reporting on, along with Annie Hayes at syracuse.com, right? Like, again, the what-ifs, you don't want to spend too much time on them, but that's a legit what-if in football. The guys that decided to come back and make a run at it, and this is what they came back for, Chris. Trevor Pena told our colleague Kenny Lacy that, and Kenny wrote about that on syracuse.com, right? Like, this, not just the wins, but the feeling of what you're leaving behind. Did you leave Syracuse football better than when you left it? And the answer is unequivocally yes for those guys.
And, Fran talked about it. I think it was Monday. It might have been last week. But his appreciation for those guys in terms of how they welcomed the transfer portal guys. That is a recipe. There was a blend this year that I think Fran will figure it out. But it's a special blend, right, where you have guys that had suffered and really were eager to win. No matter what it meant for themselves in terms of playing different positions, in terms of playing time, like they just wanted to win, and you supplemented them with transfer portal guys who were looking for, their playing time and to be part of a program. But that is a really sort of unique recipe that Syracuse had this year that hopefully they can bottle it up. But absolutely true that those guys from Dino's, later teams were part of that secret sauce.
Okay, Chris, thanks to our Syracuse Sports Insiders, as always, for some of your, I picked a handful of some amazing texts from you guys, but always appreciate your feedback. So to the secret voicemail line we go, Chris.
Okay.
And this first voice is, now I have not heard this, okay, per tradition with Rock and Ron. You and I and the audience hear it for the first time together. I'm sure he was pretty pleased with this one, but let's find out together.
Hey, Brent and Chris, Rockin' Ron in Florida. One happy freaking camper, along with 90,000 SU fans up in Syracuse and all around. We couldn't be any happier. They didn't let us down, even though we were down by 21. The general took control, Mr. McCord, and says, we'll get this. And he sure did. 380 yards later. Oh, man, what a game. And I'm going to say this probably for the first time, and you'll hear it. That O-line did a fantastic job tonight. And couldn't be any prouder of them either. And our D, I'll tell you right now, they've been doing it all year, but they didn't break. And come up with big key plays, especially the cornerback there, ran it in, fumble for a touchdown for us. They just put us in the lead, and or just before it maybe. But I'm glad Coach gets to take a shower tonight. But anyways, we're so happy people tonight, aren't we? But anyways, I'll take this win and I'll cherish it for a long time.
That's our guy, Rockin' Ron. He was pretty happy about this one, as you can imagine.
The best thing for Fran is probably, I think they're going to avoid the Mayo Bowl. He was in line for the Mayo shower, which I don't know how that would have flown. So
A
fortunately,
whole different kind of winners get washed situation
yeah,
there.
I think he's going to avoid the mayo shower, so that's probably a good thing.
So, Chris, we have a surprise. We have a mystery voicemail to play. Somehow, this person got a hold of the secret voicemail line
Oh, wow.
and wanted to tell us what they thought about not only this win, but this 9-3 season. So, without further ado, mystery caller, reveal yourself.
Hey, Brent and Insiders. It's Emily. I'm sitting on my couch in Minneapolis. Just watched Syracuse beat Miami. And I'm calling partially first to cash in on my bragging rights for having adjusted at midseason my season prediction to being 9-3, which of course Syracuse is now with that win. Not quite the losses that I think we predicted preseason or midseason, but hey, the numbers were right, and that's the biggest part. Also had switched, which several of us did, switch our ACC champion to Clemson, who will now play in the title game with Syracuse having knocked Miami out. And I kept Pop-Tarts Bowl as my bowl prediction, and I hear that they were in the Dome today. So that would be an exciting one if Syracuse got to go to Orlando and play in the Pop-Tart Bowl and eat whatever delicious, scrumptious, secret mystery flavor they unveil at the Pop-Tarts Bowl. But, I mean, man, what a game today. Like, when Miami went up, I think it was after the second touchdown, 14-0, you know, I was like a little like, okay, not going great, but also Miami's had so many games go awry in the second half this year. We've seen Syracuse battle back from deficits, bigger than that one though. And even when it got to 21-0, I was like, you know, I think there's still time for this team, and this team can pull this out, and they did. And, you know, they got big performances out of their biggest stars and the people that you'd want to show out in what will likely be their final games in Syracuse uniforms, right? Trevor Pena, Kyle McCord, LaQuinn Allen, who everything on social media has indicated that he's probably moving on from the program. And so just all around good stuff, obviously from the offense. We saw that go to an offensive shootout, which had kind of been how I thought that game would go most of the season, even dating back kind of to some of the early stuff we were seeing. But defense stepped up too and had some heads-up plays. That Devin Grant fumble recovery was crazy, and of course then having the wherewithal to take it back 56 yards or whatever to the house and just coming up with some big stops on Ward, Fiddle-Diggs sack, and just all of that. So Fran Brown's done a great job with this team this season, and I mean, for a year one, I don't know that there is too much that you can legitimately ask for better out of what this result's been. So hopefully they get a good opponent for a bowl game, maybe an SEC foe, something like that, someone, again, that'll test them and make for a good matchup like today. But I will be watching, and then hopefully a good handful of these guys will be out at the Combine in March, and I'll see them there. And maybe, as I was saying, hopefully I will get a chance to see some of these guys at the Combine in March, and then who knows, maybe someone will end up out with the Vikings, and I'll get a little reunion. But miss you, Brent, miss all the insiders, and looking forward to seeing where Syracuse lands for the bowl game.
Ladies
As I
and
was
gentlemen,
saying, hopefully
Emily Liker got the voicemail line and some great analysis there, Chris, of the season. She did say 9-3 at our midseason picks. I did not. I stuck with 8-4. Did you stick with your?
I stuck with 8-4.
Yep.
Original prediction. Tried to stick with it.
Same. So Emily out there already kicking butt covering the Minnesota Vikings, but had to get her end of season thoughts in there. It was great to hear her voice. How'd she get that voicemail line? I'll have to figure that out.
It's a mystery, a real mystery.
She's such a good reporter, Chris. She's found out the mystery voicemail line somehow, some way. But I'll say this. There'll be so much to go over in the offseason of how this was done. But just a closing thought on this, Chris. And again, I want you guys to enjoy this because 9-3 is 9-3. But Fran has now set the standard. Emily said it there. To do this in year one, well, that's the standard you've set. And it's like, well, he had McCord, and it's like, no. In this era, in the portal era, when you can go find talent immediately, and we've seen how well he's recruited, both by numbers and by talent, that's the standard you've set. So 9-3, is that look? If they go 8-4 next year, nobody's going to jump off a bridge or fire a coach. But I just find that fascinating that it is year one, and this is kind of the standard you've set. And from the minute he's gotten in front of a microphone, Chris, he has spoke of nothing less. And to back it up in year one is pretty incredible. But going forward, how he matches this is going to be, it's going to give us a lot to write about. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I warn people to be careful with next year's expectations. Just the schedule is just so difficult. Like Louisville had Jeff Brom came in. He went, I believe, 9-3 last year with a bunch of transfers, and then their schedule has been insane this year. And I think they're going to go. I think they're at 8-4. And that's a great season for them, given that they played Notre Dame in the non-conference and they had to play Clemson. So wins and losses are not the be-all, end-all, right? You do also have to take things like that into account when you judge a program. But certainly, we'll all hope that they can only climb higher and become the next Alabama.
And just a reminder, 2025 for Syracuse. They open the season against Tennessee and Atlanta. They have Colgate, UConn, and Notre Dame in their technically non-conference schedule, although Notre Dame kind of feels like an ACC game in a lot of ways. ACC home games next year, BC, Pitt, Duke, North Carolina. ACC road games next year for Syracuse, Clemson, Miami, Georgia Tech, SMU.
And that Georgia Tech game is going to be great because both coaches were fired up this year. You watch Georgia Tech, Georgia. Brent Key, I believe, has the number 2 recruiting class in the ACC this year. That game is going to be fun. And we don't think about Georgia Tech that way, but that game is going to be fun.
Those 4 road games, and I'm not sure where Notre Dame is next year. That might be a neutral site game. We'll see. But those 4 road games and Notre Dame on the slate. So giddy up, kids. But hey, look what Fran Brown did in 2024. What he can do in 2025. Is anybody going to doubt it? We shall see. Chris, thank you so much for hopping not only here on the podcast, but all your great work during the season here. No rest for the weary, as we mentioned, because we got signing day and the portal opening soon, so we'll be all over it. But been a pleasure to sit next to you in the press box and watch you do your thing, and appreciate all your great coverage and work for our readers and our listeners throughout the season, my friend.
Well, thanks for letting me jump in for Emily, and hopefully I did a semi-decent job replacing her. I know I can't, but I did my best.
You did more than that for sure, my friend. So thanks to Chris Carlson. Thanks to our Syracuse Sports Insiders. We didn't get to do this for most of the season last year. Our insider program started late in the football year. It was a lot more of the off-season stuff, which we'll be tracking for you closely, of course, with the portal and recruiting and everything coming up here in the offseason. But thanks to you guys for all your great feedback throughout the season, during games and during the week. It's been incredible, certainly meeting a lot of you in Vegas, and this community is continuing to grow. So tell your friends to become a Syracuse Sports Insider. We just love the feedback that we get from you guys and appreciate all that you've done for us and for the podcast. And thanks to everybody that was here for after every game, whether they were noon games, 3:30 games, night games, whatever the case may be, in Vegas, late at night. You guys were here watching the postgame show and listening to the postgame show, maybe later on Spotify or Apple, wherever you get that. So we appreciate that. We'll be keeping it going for basketball, of course. But thanks for everything you guys did during this season. It is much appreciated. And the season that ends at 9-3 in the regular season, remember, bowl game to go, and we'll find out that bowl game coming up soon, so we'll certainly track all that for you and get you ready for whatever bowl game Syracuse goes to. But they finish it off with a 42-38 win over No. 6 Miami, the biggest comeback in Syracuse football history. What a way to put a cap on the regular season for the Orange, and what a way to cap our last Syracuse football postgame show of the regular season. Thank you to you guys for being a part of it. For Chris Carlson, I'm Brent Axe. This has been Syracuse Football Postgame presented by Krause Health, the exclusive healthcare partner for Syracuse Athletics. We'll catch you next time, guys.